American cinema was in a phase of transition in the 1950s, with the opportunity for new creative voices to emerge on an independent film scene and give rise to authorship of films. Film scholar Andrew Sarris expanded upon the auteur theory in 1962 with his essay discussing three premises to qualify as an auteur. 1. The ability to competently craft a film. 2. Have a recognizable style among a director's work. And 3. To intertwine interior meaning between films. Sarris saw this ability in Hollywood's golden age with John Ford, Orson Welles, Howard Hawks, and Billy Wilder. I'm going to examine why I think Stanley Kubrick fits his billing as an important auteur that used his style as substance to elevate the original material he was adapting and to push genre conventions beyond their limits. Kubrick got his start as a photographer for Look magazine, where his eye for composition would be fine-tuned and utilized to great effect for filmmaking. After a few short films and exhaustive research about filmmaking, he made his first successful feature film, Killer's Kiss, in 1955. By using convention of noir filmmaking, which carried over to 1956's The Killing, he had garnered the attention of the American independent film scene. His third film in 3 years, 1957's Paths of Glory, would establish him as one of the best up-and-coming filmmakers of the era, and prove that his attention to detail in all aspects of production, including writing, shooting, and editing, made his films the singular vision of one auteur. Kubrick chose his adaptations carefully and researched the topics of his narratives exhaustively to create total verisimilitude within the world-building of his stories. He would often enter into different genres of films such as noir, war, sci-fi, and drama, but would not adhere strictly to the rules of said genre, oftentimes creating new conventions. 2001: A Space Odyssey would change the sci-fi genre forever, and his use of special effects and offering of an experience of cinematic immersion would be utilized by many films and filmmakers soon after. Oftentimes, Kubrick would use social satire within his films to comment not only about the genre, but society as a whole. Whether it be Humbert lusting after a young girl in Lolita, the fate of the world left in the hands of bumbling and incompetent military leaders in Dr. Strangelove, or Dave Bauman battling wits with supercomputer HAL 9000 in 2001: A Space Odyssey, Kubrick always had something to say about society with the interior meaning of his films. Kubrick's use of cinematic language would be his most recognizable signature of style and form. Oftentimes his symmetrical style of framing compositions would stand out, as seen in Paths of Glory, Dr. Strangelove, 2001: A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, The Shining, and Full Metal Jacket. This attention to detail would be iconic and inspired many filmmakers who followed him. Perhaps Kubrick's most defined visual characteristic is his use of the close-up at moments of high tension, escalating the madness of his characters. We see this with the title character in Spartacus, with General Jack D. Ripper in Dr. Strangelove, HAL 9000 in 2001, Alex DeLarge in A Clockwork Orange, Jack Torrance in The Shining, and Private Pyle in Full Metal Jacket. His use of tracking camera is also legendary, guiding an audience along with the characters through war trenches in Paths of Glory, around a space station in 2001, around a music store in A Clockwork Orange, on a battlefield in Barry Lyndon, down the hallways of the Overlook Hotel in The Shining,
Do you feel dizzy?
with a Marine platoon in Full Metal Jacket,
Jesus H. Christ!
and through a mysterious mansion in Eyes Wide Shut. Kubrick's innovative use of the Steadicam would prove invaluable in the twilight of his career. He would also make exact use of the slow zoom, revealing his protagonist at the beginning of Clockwork Orange, showing the isolated loneliness of Barry Lyndon in Barry Lyndon, making a slow zoom as Jack Torrance becomes more insane in The Shining. Kubrick would also establish a recognizable use of classical music within his film scores, using it for the grand entrance to 2001, as well as creating leitmotif with The Monolith. In A Clockwork Orange, Alex's love for Beethoven would also play a key factor into the music for the film. Classical pieces of the time would also be used to world build in Barry Lyndon, and Kubrick would change it up for Full Metal Jacket by using pop culture songs. Oh, well, everybody's heard about the bird. Kubrick was also proficient with his use of the Kuleshov effect, a form of associative editing that would intercut images together to imply meaning. He would employ this in 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I'll go in through the emergency airlock.
Without your space helmet, Dave, we're going to find that rather difficult.
Hal, I won't argue with you anymore. Open the doors.
Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore.
Come and play with us.
And The Shining.
Come and play with us, Danny. Forever and ever and ever.
In his 40-plus year career, Kubrick only made 12 features, but they all seem to correlate in some fashion with the meticulous design by the craftsman director, and the thematic repetition at the core of the narratives he has chosen to adapt. Only Spartacus was not written by Kubrick, as he was said to be a hired hand for the studio. He sought to comment on love, sex, violence, and death within his films, and how humanity was fascinated with each. Love and death intersect in Killer's Kiss, Lolita, and Barry Lyndon. Kubrick paints man as sex and violence starved in Dr. Strangelove, A Clockwork Orange, Full Metal Jacket, and Eyes Wide Shut. Like most innovative creators, Kubrick took existing stories and elevated them and told them through his mastery of cinematic language. Rather than execute the visions of others, he marked his films and filmography with his own style. Stanley Kubrick's methodical approach to filmmaking made him a standout filmmaker and visual storyteller for the 20th century.